Welcome everyone to Mail Fuzz TV. I am Peter, that is Tara. We talk about TV shows here. The year is 2022 and the name of the show is Babylon 5. This is going to be season 5, episode 16. It's called And All My Dreams Torn Asunder. So full spoilers for the episode as always. And yeah, it definitely feels like we're ramping up into like what the season's like main story is at this point. You know, I was quite positive on the last episode, and I feel like this one did a good job of making everything feel like a big deal. You know, it feels like we're getting into war with the Centauri, and all this is kicking off now. So yeah, good. I feel like this last assuming this keeps up, I would say that this last third of the season feels a bit more, you know, like it's got more direction than perhaps some of the first half of the season or so didn't. But yeah. What did you make of the episode, Tara?
Yeah, I definitely thought it was a good episode. Very high stakes. Well done. I can't help but think like this season overall feels like it's a lot of seasons sort of smushed into one. Because I feel like all the plot bits that we get in this that are exciting are also pretty familiar, you know? War with the Centauri and being Londo and Jakar being locked up and stuck. Jakar being stuck, you know, on a planet. I don't know. It feels like there's a lot of plot beats here that are familiar. But it's still a good episode. I definitely enjoyed it.
I mean, they're a little bit different, but I think some of that might just come from, like, whoever this was originally... Because we're kind of, like, sort of making that future we know that this has to get to at some point, you know, with Londo being here, Centauri Prime under the rule of this other entity, and, you know, Londo asking future Sheridan for help and all that stuff. Like, we're kind of, like, setting up that future now, and that all makes, you know, some amount of sense. I do wonder in the original plan, had they not thought they were ending in season 4 and then ended their story and then did a sort of season on top of that anyway, I do wonder how much of this would have even been in the story and how much of it would have maybe not felt like it is repeating some beats because it would have happened naturally along the first time we did certain beats, as opposed to, oh, we're kind of, you know, doubling back and setting some of it up now more directly.
Yeah.
So,
I don't know. It just feels like a lot of things aren't as exciting as like the last time we went through it. Just because of, I don't know, it's just different. The season feels different.
Oh, yeah, I think we've agreed that the whole time it's felt a little different. I think most of the audience feel it's a little different to the previous seasons. I would say that this episode is very effective, and I felt the sense of tragedy, and I felt that last episode with, you know, Delenn hugging Londo and all that stuff. But I would say that, you know, this show, some of its most exciting elements back in like season 2 is when we realised that this war that we're set on the path to was inevitable. I did kind of feel that again here. It's not as good as that first time, don't get me wrong, but there is that sort of slightly different element to it, which is like there's a bit more of a tragedy here because Londo is kind of friends with some of these people now, and he's not really responsible for this specific thing that's going on. So there is kind of like an interesting dichotomy with like how they're having to treat him because he's there to represent the Centauri, but also none of them really believe that he's responsible, that he's involved, but they still have to treat him like he's the head of that regime or representative of it at least. So you get
he's
that.
Definitely more naive this time around, and
yeah,
you're right. Like people don't. I think they feel like they really got through to him with the last war, and now this is happening again, but they can't do anything about it.
My favourite thing about the episode is probably was a couple of moments where I was like kind of dreading that maybe Londo, when he's like confronted with all this like accusation and the evidence, and there was a couple of points where I was thinking, oh, while he's making his speech like refuting all these claims, the first time before Lanier comes out and shows the video proof, I was thinking, oh, is he going to like double down here because he feels like he's been betrayed, even though he doesn't really like have a heart in this. He's just kind of going to react to it because he's going to revert to old Londo. And I kind of loved that he didn't really, like, once Lanier came out and showed the video, he like they said, have you got a reaction to this? And he just sort of says no. Like I have nothing.
He pleads the fifth.
Yeah.
And he says, yes, I'll wait to comment until I talk to my government.
I know he ultimately comes back and does what his government wants him to do, which is to say, no, we're not going to accept responsibility for this, and any attempt of like blocking us will be an act of war, blah 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 blah. But he does argue with the other Centauri. He clearly is actually, he's trying to debate with them. You know, he's effectively trying to like get to the bottom of it when he's on call with the, and clearly this, you know, Lord or whoever he's talking to is already like part of this, you know, alien takeover that's happening on Centauri Prime. But he is actively, he is actively trying to like figure it out and fight against it. And it's hard not to feel a little bad for Londo at some points in this episode, because he feels left out. He feels like he's not in the loop. He's been kind of blindsided by a lot of this stuff, and you know, you see kind of his reaction as viewers reading what these accusations are, because he's not in the room when most of the accusations happening. He's been kept away. Zach has to turn him away from going into the room. But I think that, and then the idea that Jakar still wants to go and protect him. And like Jakar's little speech when he's talking to Delenn about how Londo, we don't believe Londo's responsible for this, and not only that, I think that when Londo does realize this is all going on and he's come to accept that it's going on, he might actually be the one best hope of fixing it all. He's the one who might actually fight from the inside to change it and fix it. I thought that was kind of nice. The idea that, you know, Jakar believes in it. And there's still a little bit of that odd couple chemistry where he's like, oh, I'm going to sit next to him on the flight and, like, you know, talk to him. Gives me something to talk to. And, you know, Delenn's like, but Londo hates that. He likes to go to sleep on the plane. He's like, oh, I know. You know, like, so you still got that you know, funny side to the relationship. But there's actually something kind of sweet about Jakar kind of like, no, he may actually be the one that's able to fix this in the long run. I really like that element of it.
Yes. Yeah, I like the thing that that Londo really sticks to his guns for is Lanier also, and Lanier's credibility when he's talking to
I like
minister,
that too, yeah.
whoever it is. He's like, oh well, they could have faked this or whatever, and he's like, no, I know Lanier and I know his character, and I know that that's not the case. Like, this is definitely real. That was real footage and real fighters, our fighters. And the explanation is basically like, well, we're just going to blame the Narn. The Narn do it. That's an easy thing to do, right? That's the target that everybody picks on. We always pick on the Narn, and everyone believes it.
Joe, this didn't feel like to me. Obviously, he's gaslighting the whole time, every time, like, because Londo's not buying any of it. But what I really liked about this is that this is the sort of shit that Londo used to peddle himself, but now he's hearing it and he's on the other side where he's saying, this is a bunch of bullshit. You're making this up. This is just a bunch of political dodging is what you're doing. But you're doing it with me. I'm supposed to be the one you're telling the truth to, and you're bullshitting me. I kind of like
he's the prime minister, like and he doesn't know what's going on in his government. It's pretty crazy.
I like that he's on the other side of that now, and I think it makes you sort of like, again, sympathise with a bit, but also just sort of like, it's really easy to be in his shoes in this scene and be frustrated by it. You feel that frustration with him. And I think that's
plus
good
they got
storytelling.
Like some actor who has the best posh smug dialect.
Yeah, I think he's listed here just as the minister. In the credits, at least on IMDb. Well, you know what these talks down. You know what these Narn are like. Oh, I can't let you contact Babylon 5 for security reasons. You know, he's very.
Yeah, he comes off very pompous.
Yeah. So no, I love all this build up. I love that the first half of the episode is like the tension of going to this meeting where they reveal this to the council and Londo's reaction, and then we get Londo coming in and talking about it, and then the second time when he's seen the evidence and he's talked to his government and he has to come in and make these big statements, and we know his heart's not in it. We know that he doesn't really I agree with you that I love that he sticks up for Lanier. I love that he's like, no, Lanier like would not lie, like that he is not going to deceive anyone. Like, I believe him. I believe that there's some truth to whatever this is. And obviously there's more to it than just the Centauri or being bad guys. We know that there's another layer to this. It's not just that, but I do really appreciate that. I love the idea that Londo now, like obviously he's pissed at some of them for like sort of doing this behind his back, and part of me wonders, what would it have been like if they'd just sort of like immediately, as soon as he came in and said where that button was from, like if they'd just said, well, this is who attacked Garibaldi. This is who's involved with all this. Like, what would Londo's reaction have been? How would he have helped? Because I would have liked to have believed Londo would immediately want to help and try and solve it. That may not be the best
which is
course
why
of action.
Which is why he would have been killed, more than likely.
Yeah,
or
very
imprisoned
possibly.
or
Yeah.
something. Yeah.
So I mean, was Jakar still with Londo in the future as some sort of bodyguard? We saw that in that future scene. So, yeah, all of that makes some amount of sense. And it's still very funny at times, like that cut at the end when the minister's like, no, we're going to put Jakar's still part of this alliance who we're at war with now, so we're going to put him in a cell. We'll make it the nicest cell we've got, but he's going in a cell. And London's like, no, where he goes I go, and where I go he goes. And this idiot, he's not stupid enough to put his own prime minister in a cell, and then it cuts to them in a cell. Like, that's a funny cut.
It is, but at least with the prime minister in the cell with him, like, maybe he'll be able to protect Jakar.
Oh, sure, yeah.
So he's not going to get tortured again. Which, if he was in a cell alone, that may be the case.
Yeah, regardless of what they say, I assume there'll be some Narn who'll just want to, or sorry, some Centauri who'll just want to mistreat him and, be awful.
Yeah.
In a general sense.
Or kill him. Who knows?
Or just forget he's there and forget to feed him. That's also possible. There's a lot of possibilities.
Right.
for these things. So yeah, all of that main stuff I thought was quite good, and obviously it escalates in a couple of different ways throughout the episode. And every so often we bring this up, but I think if you go back and look at season 1's effects, and then you look at some of the scenes this season with the effects, you can definitely tell that they've improved quite a bit.
Yeah, I like the scene with the council where they show the footage and it's like a 3D screen almost, just in the center, where it's transparent so people on either side can watch it. Yeah,
I was just thinking later on when the Centauri come through the jump gate and the Drazi try to block them and the fighting breaks out. I was like, this does look significantly better than what the ships used to look like back in season 1. I guess that's just that you're starting off in 93 computer technology, and then you're ending in 1998, give or take, computer that obviously that's ancient to us still now, but that's a big difference. Technology moves so fast.
They may have a different crew for special effects in the 5th season, since they went to a different channel, or some people probably left, right?
Maybe, I don't know. My impression was it was the same production company making the show, so I don't know how much it would affect the personnel, but I mean, I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah.
Maybe they got a little bit extra budget or something as incentive to come back for one more season. Which is typically not what happens, but I'm just, pondering for the sake of pondering.
They did give him a full spread of episodes plus TV movies.
True. Really wanted to try and, prop up their new network and
dangle that carrot. Yeah.
Yeah. Obviously, the Garibaldi alcoholism stuff came to a bit of a head here as well. Zach actually finds him and is very quickly able to deduce that he's drunk. Tests him.
I love Zach.
Throws some more.
I think Zach's great in this scene.
Yeah, he's got a few good scenes in this, but yeah, he's really good here. He's not only does he sort of suss him out and make it very clear, he's like, yeah, well, you're not drunk. Well, how about you come closer so I can smell your breath, and then maybe we'll talk. But he basically, he gets really stern with it. He's like, look, here's a gun. Just shoot yourself. It'll be quicker, and you won't drag as many people down with you on this, the path of being the alcoholic who's going down that and lying and deceiving. And sure enough, by the end of the episode, he actually misses a call about the Centauri coming in, and it's his fault the White Star fleet isn't there to help the Drazi, which sort of is why this fight breaks out in the first place. So no one, I think, knows by the end of this episode that that's why it happened.
No, and Garibaldi doesn't speak up about it,
yeah.
So I guess Garibaldi can assume that he missed a call, or maybe there was a little red flashing light or something for a missed message. But I was surprised. I thought that's how it was going to end, with him on the line. Obviously he shouldn't be there.
Yeah,
he's too compromised.
He's a very sleepy drunk, isn't he? That's everything he's done bad when he's been drunk so far is always because he's asleep.
Yeah, liquor can knock you out at weird times too. And then it wakes you up, so you don't really have a whole lot of rest, and then you just sort of feel tired the the rest of the day. Like, you'll be knocked out for like 4 hours and then awake, wide awake.
Which is just to say that I'm not saying it's unrealistic. Like, I've never personally had to deal with an alcoholic, you know, in a sort of close way where I'm the one looking out for them. But what I'm really trying to say is that he's clearly very good at hiding it, because there's, other than this scene where Zach catches him when he's not expecting it, he by and large makes sure he's not drunk in front of people, you know, at least visibly, where he's like slurring his words and not able to keep up with the conversation, things like that.
Yeah.
So, you know.
Yeah, he's hiding it. He's got all the excuses ready, like he just took a nap or whatever.
Yeah.
But, yeah.
Yeah. That said, though, it sounds a bit suspicious when he says, look, it's been a long day, there's a lot of work, I went to sleep, I'm entitled. Like, if you're having to tell someone you're entitled to sleep, you know, this sounds a bit fishy.
Yeah.
As an excuse, but... I
wonder if anyone else has really noticed a pattern. Yeah, or maybe there's just too much going on.
Probably just too much going on.
Because he seems to miss a lot of calls and is late often. So
well, yeah, one of my critiques with the Garibaldi plot recently is maybe just that it's been a little repetitive. You know, not this episode was fine because this was everything finally like happening as a result of it. But there was a few episodes in a row where it was kind of the same thing with him.
Yeah, yeah. This one was kind of giving me vibes of the was it Breaking Bad, where John Delancey's the air traffic controlman, who's like too distracted and causes a big scene and stuff like that. Garibaldi's kind of like that guy.
So it's a weird comparison I wasn't expecting.
I don't know why
sure.
I brought it. Yeah, I thought of that moment.
Yeah, I thought that was good. Franklin gets to be a bit of an action hero this episode. He gets to escort Veer and ends up taking out a bunch of Drazi or whatever. No, that wasn't Drazi. It was the other race. The one that sits next to the Drazi in the council.
Is it the game?
Oh,
or the game?
No, aren't.
They're
maybe.
named after Neil Gaiman, right?
Maybe. I don't know if that's them. I don't know. There's a lot of alien species on this show. Can't remember.
Yeah, I don't know.
The ones that look a little Cardassian, as I described their visual look.
Okay.
That's Cardassians, as in Cardassians from Star Trek, not the Kardashians, just in case anyone misheard me there.
Classic joke.
Well, it occurred to me some people might mishear, so I thought I'll clarify. But yeah,
you said on Star Trek.
When I was explaining it, I didn't say it the first time.
No, I thought you did.
There you go.
Maybe I just think Star Trek all the time. Is it Star Trek? That's what my brain's doing all the time.
So some fun bits like that. I liked Sheridan getting frustrated with the council. You know, even just everything with him and Delenn at the start, where they're like scared about this meeting, like they know how much of a big deal this is going to be, and that it's going to start this fight with Londo and might lead to a war. But I love where everyone's bickering about this and wanting action, and he just sort of yells, "You none of you want peace. You just want war. That's what makes you happy." And he yells it. He gets really upset. And it is this sort of thing where they're always demanding action, and ultimately what is action in these situations if not some sort of conflict, as opposed to trying to maintain some form of peace.
They do have reason to be upset, though. I mean, Sheridan did promise that the White Star, they had a plan and things didn't go to plan because, you know, someone from Earth was at fault.
I do like that we know why Garibaldi made this screw up and no one else does. So Sheridan is like, he just sort of takes Garibaldi's word, oh, the call never went through, something happened, there was an error, whatever. He doesn't know, like, it's making me concerned about, like, if he realizes this was like Garibaldi, like, honestly, the most honorable thing for Garibaldi to do at this point would be to confess it and like admit that this big thing happened because he messed up, because he did this. That would be the only way for him to truly redeem his action, or to start to redeem his action, would be to admit it. Because
I assume a bunch of Drazi died.
Yeah,
because they said they were no match for the Centauri. Yeah,
he can never let them know that. Like that's what he can confess it to Sheridan and co, but he can never tell, because they will hate him. They will, maybe not a war criminal, but they'll see him as a murderer effectively.
Well, negligence. Yeah. Yeah. I don't know exactly what kind of charges would be, but yeah, definitely due to his negligence and just, you know, intoxicated while working. Also, I mean, Zach kind of bears some responsibility if he like finds out the truth.
That's true.
He had a chance to pull him.
He had a choice, yeah. He had the choice to either turn him in or help him and try and like help. And it's the sort of thing where Zach himself says you picked a hell of a time for this, and it's the sort of thing where if things weren't so high stakes right now, maybe Zach's in the right for like giving him a chance to like try and get over this and try and get through it. But you know, like immediately Garibaldi's put in this very the important position where he's coordinating fleets of ships who are protecting people and trying to stop the outbreak of an actual war, because they're not actually at war yet. They're teetering on war, but by the end of the episode they're in a war. Mm-hmm. And partly because of Garibaldi falling asleep.
Yep.
So you know,
that's a lot of weight.
Yeah.
On his shoulders.
But
I mean, if that's the only thing if that's the straw that broke the camel's back, you know.
It's funny because like obviously Zach did make the wrong choice, but it's a very sympathetic wrong choice. You understand why he wants to give him a chance, why he wants to be a friend to him.
Yeah, he pleads for it, you know. But at the end of that scene, you know, Garibaldi asks him if he's gonna say something, and Zach like just says, "I don't know. Like, I don't know what the right decision is. Like, I might have to." But, you know, ultimately he doesn't, because Garibaldi goes to work. So, you know, if that is something that he finds out about, like that he's probably the reason for this, I mean, Garibaldi is going to have, if he doesn't feel bad about that, because Zach's innocent, you know, then I don't know. Like, that has to be addressed.
Oh, for sure. Joe, I like about this. I like that we've really flipped this place where Garibaldi's the one in the wrong, and Zach now being the chief of security, like truly is like the one in the scene with the power. Like he's the one in the scene with the authority, and it's just kind of interesting to think that he was this just side character who was practically an extra when he first popped up, and like it's just the progression is very nice to get to this point, you know. So, because he's had great scenes with other characters, but obviously Garibaldi's the one that he was friends with because he worked under Garibaldi, and you know, here we are. Yeah,
and he had a redemption arc of his own that he had to go through, and you know, that made him a really sympathetic character. And during this scene too, he's talked about. I think this is something that's brought up about his character previously, that he's also had struggles, and like Garibaldi gave him a chance to do this job, also, or had to like gamble with it. But because, you know, it's his friend and he believes in him, he knows what he's capable of, he does it, sticks up for him. Which is, you know, one of the reasons I think Zach felt guilty enough to let Garibaldi redeem himself here.
Yeah.
But wasn't able to.
But the stakes were maybe just a bit too high to let that ride in a way that you might otherwise let go. You know, because there's lives in his hands, basically.
Yeah.
You know? It's kind of like getting behind the wheel when you're drunk, but like multiplied by, well, however many people died, basically multiply it by that number, and that's what you're getting at, kind of.
Yeah. So Garibaldi is now, his friend has been killed, and he has started a war because of his alcoholism.
Yeah. Oh yeah, his friend from the I was like, Zach didn't die. We talked about yes, yeah, the guy from when he went to the Drazi, homeworld, I remember. So yeah,
and he's got some stripes with his girlfriend, fiance.
Yeah, ex-wife, soon to be
ex-wife,
second, or it's not a second wife. You remarry, I suppose. It's your first wife, part 2.
Right.
Yeah, I think Joe is so interesting about this Garibaldi arc. As much as there's been some, I think, repetitive qualities to some of the storytelling over a few of the episodes recently, is that I do like that, unlike last season where he was doing all these villainous things, but we knew that there was some manipulation and it wasn't his fault, and he was truly a victim for what he was doing. I think you can almost kind of say that for this season, and the way you look at alcoholism, and that this is a disease that he has, and ultimately, obviously, he should be taken out of positions of control and power because he shouldn't be, you know, doing any of that. But it is kind of interesting to compare it to that, where one is literal mind control and manipulation, and the other one is a more real thing that does kind of consume people's minds and does like take over and stops them from acting rationally.
They're not doing a metaphor this season. They're just telling you straight up.
I do think it's interesting to do this after, and it's almost a knock-on effect from that, because the reason why he started drinking in the first place this season was that, it was an interaction with Bester, and that loss of control that he felt, he wanted to take control back by deciding to do this kind of thing. There was that element to it. So
yeah, I am sympathetic towards him, but I don't know. I'm not really as much as I was the first time he dipped back into alcoholism in like the first season or something, when he had just a little spill. And I don't know, maybe it's because they've just, last season it was him doing a bunch of things that we weren't sure, like we knew it was mind control, but like some of it felt very real still, where you're just like, God, he's just really an irritating character now, but like intentionally so. And then this season, like, he's really making a lot of mistakes where I'm just like, I don't know, I'm starting to not be on his side, this character's side anymore. So I don't feel as sympathetic.
Yeah, I think it mirrors like how you might feel about a real person, and that you can feel sympathy up to a point, but when they keep screwing up, there's like a kind of a, there's a curve to where eventually you have to like save yourself from them a little bit.
Yeah.
I think this maybe comes back to what we were saying earlier about the repetition of some of the plots of like them thinking they weren't getting another season, so wrapping things up and then having to do another season anyway. I think a lot of what they're doing with Garibaldi is interesting. It's a good comparison to last season, and it's valid storytelling, but at the same time it does kind of feel like the stakes were so high last season with even just his personal story. Is obviously everything was higher stakes, but his personal story felt higher stakes because of this mind control thing. That moment when he finally realizes what's happened to him and Bester lets him go, and he like screams in that the Mars train or whatever, like that moment is like haunting. It's like, God, this guy has been violated in a way that like you can't comprehend. So while it makes sense for him to go off the deep end, trying to recover from that, it's understandable. You can be empathetic towards it. Inherently, it might not be quite as moving or as engaging as that initial journey that he was on. So I think it's doing a pretty reasonable job with it, and I do think it's starting to spin up into some more interesting elements now that he's really causing problems with like everything going on. But there was definitely some like some teething issues getting there, I think. I think that goes for a lot of the season, and I think it comes from, again, they ended their story last season and they had to gradually over half or so of a season build back up to the stakes been high again.
Yeah.
Whereas originally,
you're probably right.
Yeah, and originally they had like 4 seasons to do that whole thing. They built up gradually through all of season 1, and I would say it's about 2/3 into season 2, but it really like, okay, we're kicking it to high gear now. That's where it kicked in, but it felt really earned by that point because it was all this setup. Here it's like you've got like maybe 13 episodes of 14 to get to that same point.
Let me ask you something.
Okay.
If Ivanova was still on the show and she was made captain, do you think we would see the captain more? Or the commander of Babylon 5 more? I feel like Tracy Skakis is just an extra in this season now.
I think that's That's an interesting point to me. I think if she was still here and she was given that role as captain of
I think she clearly would have been promoted to that role.
I think if that was her role, I think, we'd naturally just see her at all the meetings with the other... If nothing else, she'd be at the meetings with the other characters. She would probably be either not replacing Zach necessarily, but certainly might have some of these scenes with Garibaldi as like closer, friend or something. But... yeah, we'd probably see more of her. I think, don't get me wrong, this show has always had like characters who'll disappear for like 3 or 4 episodes and then come back, right? That's been a pretty consistent thing with a lot of their characters. But yeah, it's just kind of weird that given that the captain was or the commander, depending on who it was at the time, was always the person we saw the most in the show. They were always the central character by and large. It's an ensemble, but they were always the one that we'd usually see in every episode. It's kind of weird now that we don't see her so much this season, especially since they made such a big deal of introducing her at the start of the season, like, oh, this is a big new main character that we're going to revolve some of the plot around.
I guess now that Byron and his hair gang are gone, then her storyline's done. Like, it was just an intro at the beginning where he like mind melded with her, and then at the end
I don't think she's done, especially since I know she's in at least one of the TV movies.
Well, that'll be good.
She's on the poster for one of them, so I know she's in at least one of them. So I don't know. It's a good question. Yeah. She's probably had about the same number of episodes as Linear, and Linear actually left and was gone for a while in story.
Right.
Where she wasn't.
Yeah,
She just
I don't know. I guess I was expecting her to, you know, take over as like second billing almost.
Yeah. I think what was most effective for me in this episode was just the all of the characters, because they're so well built up from all the past seasons. Things like, you know, Londo sticking up for Lanier, which is not a connection between two characters. You know, they had their time gambling together in season 1 where they bonded a little bit, but it's not like they've had a lot of screen time together, so that was kind of like a nice sweet thing. It felt like a big deal when Londo had to say goodbye to people. It felt like a big deal that Jakar was there to sort of protect them. You know, like there's all these like connections that mean more because of all the history. And I think this episode uses that bless you. This episode uses that I don't know, that goodwill that's been built up, if you will, or that emotional bank that's been filled over the seasons. They're tapping into that a little bit, and it's making these feel a little bit more important, these beats, which is nice. So
yeah, it's kind of a thankless role, I guess, to take over on a show for its last season only, where like everybody else has all these bonds that have been built up, and it's like, well, what do we do with this character? Are they just going to be a love interest, or what are they going to do to help the cast that we already have rather than make them an individual character?
I think they have to be a part of the central plot. Like their arc has to be one of the main things that the season is doing, and how they affect all the other things going on has to be a big deal. And I don't think Lockley has, you know, she's been there for a few specific things, but it doesn't feel like she's relevant right now to anything that's going on with the Centauri. So
no, not really.
Yeah, she's just like, you know, Zach feels like a more important character, and obviously we like Zach, but he probably shouldn't feel more important than the captain.
Yeah, that's true. Except that he is the best character in the show.
Yeah. Oh, hold on a second. Bridge Boy's kicking around here.
Well, he's been missing too. He's off with Lockley, obviously.
I mean, he was there at the start of the season. He's got his new mistress. He's happy.
Preach boy.
If I can't have Ivanova, I Ivana her. No,
you're still trying to make that work, huh?
No. Okay, all right. We can pretty much wrap up. Actually, I really like the shot. See when Londo and Jakar were getting into the palace in Centauri Prime. There's a nice shot looking up overhead, like it's a low angle looking sort of up past them at the ships going overhead. I thought that looked quite good actually as a visual. Yeah. Wow.
It was a nice little note of how Londo's not used to this, but Jakar is because of Narn or Centauri invasion of Narn.
Yeah, that's a really good point. The Centauri Prime feels more like Narn when it was occupied by Centauri than what Centauri Prime usually feels like. That's a really interesting comparison to make because it is occupied. Londo just doesn't know it's occupied.
Mm-hmm.
So that's a really good point actually. So there you go. That's our thoughts on this episode of Babylon 5. I believe Third Space, the next TV movie we're doing, aired after episode 17. So we get episode 17 next, and then Third Space. So
okay,
that's the plan. Let us know what you thought of this episode of Babylon 5 in the comments below. Like, subscribe, ding the bell for notification. All of it helps out a lot, as of course does. Go over to patreon.com/MailFuzzTV and support us over there financially. Get some bonus items and stuff for your efforts, but also just help keep all the content coming. And that's the idea. I'm struggling to speak for some reason that I'm doing the outro. I don't know why, but that's everything. Thank you very much. Keep watching Babylon 5. Just don't give away the homeworld.